Welcome. We're with the group called In Defense of the Faith. I'm Dale Deloney. I'm here with my co-host David Krill and special guest Dr. Michael Girouard. Michael Girouard is going to talk about creation evidences today. He's a medical doctor from New Orleans, and we're going to talk about the myth of evolution, validity of the Bible, the evidence for the existence of God, and specifically that Christianity is true and that there is evidence for it. And of course, if Christianity is true, then all other religions are false. Everything can't be true at the same time. 2 plus 2 equals 4, 5, 8, 1,000, whatever you think, it doesn't make sense. They contradict one another. Either Jesus Christ was God in the flesh and died for your sins and rose from the dead, or we're just some accident from chemicals with no hope, and there is no salvation. I think we all know we're sinners, and we all know God would be a good God, and He would have a way to communicate to us. We believe the Bible is the way He communicated to us. There's evidence for that through archaeology. I know you haven't been taught that, but believe me, you're going to hear some evidence today that you've never heard in your life. And you've probably never been told that there's been 2,000 fulfilled prophecies out of the Bible, no false prophecies. Mathematically impossible. The mathematical possibility for even the single cell coming into existence is impossible. There is no explanation. No matter how hard we try, we can't get life from non-life. There's a supernatural creator. And I believe the creation shows us there's God. And God has spoken to us through His Word. And in His Word He says we need Him. We need a relationship with Him. We're separated by our sin and our sin nature. And that out of His love, He's provided a way of salvation. And that was by manifesting in the flesh as Jesus Christ and paying our price that we owed for our sins and doing miracles like giving life, raising the dead, and eventually, of course, raising from the dead Himself, which Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, any of those guys, they're still dead. They didn't die for your sins, and they didn't raise from the dead. Only Jesus Christ, the God-man, did. To us. We believe the Bible is the way He communicated to us. There's evidence for that through archaeology. I know you haven't been taught that, but believe me. And I do want to tell you also, we're on your side. We're on your side. I know it's going to seem like, hey, you're going against everything I've learned, but believe me, we just want we want your eyes to be open to some other evidence that is censored out, and that, see, the evolution group has taken over the TVs, the magazines, the public schools, and all creation evidences are censored out. You're only told you come from apes, and that's all that's allowed, or else you're an idiot. Okay, so hopefully we can open your eyes on this issue. And Dave, why do we defend the faith?
Thanks, Dale. Well, it's a command of Scripture to defend the faith. Paul, when he was in prison, he wrote to the Philippians and said that he was so glad that he was in prison that now that the gospel could go out because it could have some boldness in defense of the gospel. And so he says that you may prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God, above a reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world. So we come in sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ to show the light of salvation that He has. Not to get into any great big fist fight argument, but to go in the marketplace and share the love of Jesus Christ and show that the Bible is the Word of God beyond doubt, and that Christ can save people, and the power of the gospel is the Holy Spirit convicting people of sin and bringing them to the Savior. So we're here out of love and showing that Jesus Christ is the light and life of the world, and He's the only hope for the world, and that's the only reason why we're here.
All right. Also, you can ask questions on the microphone. Bothering these people. And I do want to tell you also, we're on your side. We're on your side. I know it's going to seem like... And basically want you to know that God is just, and He's going to punish sin one day. We're all sinners. If He's a holy and just God, if He's a loving God, He's a just God, and He's going to punish sinners. But out of His love, He provided a way of salvation through Jesus Christ. If you'll come to God just as you are, and accept what He's done for you on the cross, And if you'll receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior, believe that, receive it, turn to Him, fall on His mercy, admitting you're a sinner, and turn from your ways to His, God will change you by His Holy Spirit and make a new creation. Fellowship with God will be restored. Nothing else can fill that emptiness. Booze, sex, drugs, rock and roll, they all are emptiness. Fun for a little while, but not really a satisfying thing, because we're made to have fellowship with God. So it can only be found through Jesus Christ. Very clear in the Scriptures. Now I'd like to present Dr. Girouard, and he's going to talk about evolution a little bit, and we encourage you to come up and ask questions and dialogue with us. And Doctor, why don't you just give some evidences for creation, and maybe talk about if we came from apes or not.
My name is Mike Girouard. I'm a medical physician. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. Let me just tell you a little bit about why I do this. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior about 13, 14 years ago, and when I went out and started to share with people the truth of the gospel, I found that most people had a problem with believing what the Bible said simply because of the first 11 chapters of Genesis. And they would always object, and they would say, well, Dr. Girouard, I was taught evolution, not that Adam and Eve were the first man and the first woman, but that, there were ape men. I mean, look at professional wrestlers. There's got to be ape men. They would say, Dr. Girouard, what about the Big Bang explosion? I don't believe in the beginning God created. I believe there was this Big Bang explosion and a worldwide flood. The Bible says there was a worldwide flood that destroyed everything. How can you have a worldwide flood 4,500 years ago and repopulate the earth with 5 billion people in only 4,500 years? And they would always end up by saying, Dr. Girouard, if the Bible lies in the very first verse, how can you trust any of the rest of it? And they were right. Well, I set off and I started getting some scientific literature from the Institute for Creation Research and looking at the science. And I'll be honest, I did not expect to get any science. I expected to get a lot of religion. But what I found was that the evidences were there. All of the evidence they quoted was in the scientific journals. Nearly everyone they quoted was an evolutionist, and that when you went and checked their references, they checked. More importantly, as I started going and doing my own research in the journals, I found that evolution was not the fact that I had been taught it was in college, in high school. That if you read the journals, what the evolutionists themselves are writing, and separate, or will just read their conclusions quite often, you'll see how tenuous their belief is. If you start separating the data from the interpretation, you realize that a lot of what we're presented in school is merely the interpretation and not the data. And as one evolutionist noted, I think it was Paul Ehrlich, he said, we take the evolutionary theory to interpret the data. Then we say that the data supports the theory. Well, it should, shouldn't it? And so what we have there is the circular reasoning. As I look at especially living things, I find it much more easy to believe in a creator God, especially when you look at the information biomolecules in the human system and in any living system, DNA. If you look at the second law of thermodynamics as it applies to information theory, what we find is that information systems never spontaneously come together. Water erosion over hundreds of billions of years carved the president's faces on the side of a mountain, or there is an intelligent creator. Now, what makes more sense? Nobody would ever... H.B. Yaki has published several articles on this, Journal of Molecular Biology, and he's just written a book on it, and he shows that mathematically it is impossible to get information biomolecules just by random chance, just by chemical processes taking place. Thaxton, Bradley, and Olson wrote an excellent book, The Mystery of Life's Origin. They say, look, can non-living chemicals come together to form life just based upon the laws of chemistry and physics? And they take you through the 11 biochemical steps that are necessary to get living biomolecules from non-living chemicals. And they show that each and every step is experimentally been shown to be absolutely impossible. And they say it's absolutely impossible not because they say so, not because they're Christians, not because they have any particular prejudice, but based upon the laws of chemistry and physics. And let's face it, the laws of chemistry and physics are the laws of chemistry and physics. They don't care if evolution is true or creation is true. And so when you start looking at these things, you find, wait a minute, the evidences are a little bit different than what I was presented. There is an entirely different interpretation that can be put on evidences, and an interpretation that's much more logical. Whenever I look at biological systems, information systems, I see evidence of a design. I see things that work together, not randomly thrown together, but with a purpose, to accomplish a specific purpose. And you see an incredible complexity. Even in things that are not as complex as living systems, you can recognize design and the necessity for an intelligent creator. And let me just give you an example. If you go to Mount Rushmore, simple, and convert sunlight, radiant energy, into chemical energy, can you do that? You see 4 presidents' faces. Now there are 2 possible interpretations for Mount Rushmore. Either wind and water erosion over hundreds of millions of years carved the presidents' faces on the side of a mountain, or there is an intelligent creator. Now what makes more sense? Nobody would ever argue the point that those faces got there by natural processes. Why? Because we don't see natural processes ever create complexity, design, with a purpose. And the more complex, if you will, the more information or even the more intelligence that you see in a given system, the more evidence there is for an intelligent creator. And that's exactly what God says in the Bible. He says in Romans 1:20, you know, if you look at the creation and you look around you, I have engineered systems that are much more sophisticated than you can produce. I can take sunlight, take something as simple as a plant, which is not simple, and convert sunlight, radiant energy, into chemical energy. Can you do that? And the answer is no. We'd love to be able to. Wouldn't have to worry about high gasoline prices, but nobody's been able to do that. God says, I do it every day. And he says, when you look at something as different as a plant is from a human, and recognize the unity and diversity, that's a symbol of me. You need the oxygen this thing tries to get rid of. It needs the carbon dioxide you spit out. Now that most logically looks like good design, good engineering, and a purposeful design. That's not the only explanation you can put on it. All I'm asking you is, what is the most logical explanation? When you look at complex living systems, what you see is evidence for design. Did we come from apes? Well, if you look at the evidence, I would have to say no. Dr. Charles Oxnard looked at all of the available ape skeletons, especially in the Australopithecus group, including Afarensis, Africanus, etc. And he concluded that the Australopithecines are as distinct from humans as they are from other apes. He says they're a distinct group. He says they're not turning into humans at all. Dr. Adrian Zillman, we hear so much about the Lucy skeleton, Dr. Donald Johansson's skeleton of Lucy. Adrian Zillman showed in 1983 in New Scientist magazine that Lucy's skeleton is virtually identical to a green forest pygmy chimpanzee. The problem is that you don't get research grant money for finding green forest pygmy chimpanzees, but you do for finding hominids. Now, the question would be, logically, if those alleged ape men had a distinct advantage over apes and therefore continued to evolve, why have they all become extinct? We still should find some of these apes. And that leads to the whole question of transitional forms. You know, I'd always been taught that the fossil record was the best evidence for evolution. That in the fossil record we had hundreds and thousands of evidences of one kind of creature turning into another. Well, that sounds good to us, but when you read what the evolutionists are saying, you realize that that's not true. Dr. Colin Patterson, senior paleontologist at the British Natural History Museum, probably the most respected paleontologist in the world, says that he knows of no such transitional form for which one could make a watertight argument. Niles Eldridge and Stephen Jay Gould, a paleontologist, developed their theory of punctuated equilibrium not because of the abundance of transitional forms in the fossil record, but because of the severe lack of those transitional forms. So that when we look at the evidence, it kind of fits exactly with what God said. God says, listen, things will reproduce after their own kind, within a genetic variation, no doubt, but that when we look at fossils, when we look at living creatures, we should see typology. We should be able to put critters into certain groups. And that's exactly what we're able to do. Not only with the living creatures that we have now, and it's much easier to do it with living creatures now for one simple reason. We can not only examine the bones, we can see the function, we can look at the soft anatomy, which we can't see in fossils. But even with those fossils, with the exception of a handful of very disputed groups, very disputed specimens, We do not find transitional forms. And what evolution requires, according to Dr. David B. Kitts, who is an evolutionist, he says, are about 8 men. You won't care about anything in this library. You'll want to know, is there a... Sorry, evolution requires intermediary forms, and paleontology fails to provide them. So I guess what I would tell you is to look at the scientific evidence from a different light. There's possibly another explanation on the data that you've been presented. There's possibly some old explanations that have persisted, and there's possibly some data that you haven't been presented with that you ought to consider. And that's what we're going to try to do. If you have any questions, I don't know everything, I'm not God, but I'd like to answer it. But I do want to say one other thing. I'm not here mainly to tell you about science. I'm here mainly to tell you that there is a cure for death. And that's why I became a physician. I wanted to save people's lives. And I hate to tell you, doctors don't save lives, we just delay death. The only man who ever said that he had a cure for death and said that he would put up a shut-up and prove it was Jesus Christ. He said, listen, I've got a cure for death. I will provide it free of charge, but don't take my word for it. I will die, and 3 days later, I'll get up out the grave. Now, the whole point of Christianity is not to get you to quit drinking, smoking, or whatever. The point of Christianity is to save your life. And Jesus Christ said that he had the cure, he would provide it, and he would provide proof. Yeah. The whole question is, did he get up out the grave? And that's exactly what all of the historical evidence shows. In fact, an atheist who was an expert in legal evidence, Dr. Simon Greenleaf of Harvard Law School, went out to disprove the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ. He was an expert in legal evidence. And after an intense investigation, he said the evidence overwhelmingly supported the bodily resurrection. As an atheist, he said the bodily resurrection was a fact of history. The whole point of biblical Christianity is to give you something for nothing, is to make something available, and it's what you need. It's a cure for death. Listen, I thought science was an answer for something, and I trained in anesthesiology. I taught CPR. I did a lot of codes. 5 minutes before you die, you will not care how old the earth is or about 8 men. You won't care about anything in this library. You'll want to know, is there a cure for death? And what's the evidence for that cure? Now, while science changes, history does not change. We can tell it a different way, but an historical fact is an historical fact. If Jesus Christ got up out the grave, then he provides what he says. He provides a cure for death. The evidence is there. I would just challenge you to look at it and investigate it. It's not asking anything from you. It's trying to give something to you. We have a microphone. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please. Again, I'm not God. I don't have all the answers, but we'll try.
Okay, who will be the first to come ask some questions? There's a great opportunity here. You're going to hear some evidences you've never been taught that is censored from you. You're told there's transitional forms. There are no transitional forms. And you know there should be transitional forms in every single species we see. We should see in the plants changing, in the insects changing, in every kind of animal, we should see evolution occurring now. We should see it in the fossil record, a wing, an arm turning into a wing, or a third of an eye, or a partial leg. We never.
Not you guys again.
Yeah, we're here. There's our old friend. And, well, you're not that old. You're getting older, though, every year. Anyway, you see fully functional creatures. You don't see in between eyes, half a liver, partial heart. You know, because everything has to work or you don't work. Everything, all the complex parts of a cell have to work at once or a cell doesn't work. The membrane, the nucleus, and so forth. This leaf here, it's dead. There's nothing we can do. It's got all the same elements in it. Add water, shock it, do anything you want. You're not going to bring this back to life. You don't have life from non-life. What we're telling you is that the design and information of creation points to a creator. And that creator has communicated with us, and he wants to have fellowship with us. And you can have fellowship with him through Jesus Christ. Yes, sir.
The first is, you mentioned Stephen Jay Gould. You mentioned Gould's article, or his theory of punctuated equilibrium. Could you actually give a review for these people out here what punctuated equilibrium is?
Punctuated equilibria, Gould said, listen, we don't find transitional forms because of the way things evolve. They evolve in such a way that peripheral groups will develop genetic mutations, variations, slight variations in a small group. Those small groups will become isolated and extinct before they can be fossilized. And it sort of begs the whole question, because what Gould is saying, the proof of my theory is that there is no evidence. And it's given to write off the fact that there are no transitional forms. Gould has also said, however, that he is not convinced of punctuated equilibrium. He said that he believes that eventually Goldschmidt will be vindicated in his hopeful monster theory.
Okay, let me say something. I'd just like to say that science doesn't allow, see, what is going to happen here, instead of going back to the drawing board because there's no evidence for evolution, they go to another theory that says, well, there's no transitional form, so one species must have just magically jumped to another. See, anything but admit that there's a God that created everything. We see, even in the fossil record, complex life abruptly. You ever heard the Cambrian explosion? They can't explain it. And there is no explanation. The major scientists have left Darwinism. A lot of them are leaving evolution and becoming creationists because everything we see in science points to a designer, points to a creator, a life giver. Evolution without any evidence, you should go back to the drawing board, but they won't do it because that would have to admit that there's a God. And if there's a God, that means we have to be accountable to him. And we don't want to be accountable to God. So we explain him away and say science has all the answers. But the fact is, science does not allow for the supernatural or even the existence of God at all.
Can I interject for a sec? Okay. Science, a true scientist should not presume anything that is going to interfere with the objectivity of his studies. And a true scientist can also be a Christian. However, there's lots of scientists that aren't that way, and there's lots of Christians that aren't that way.
It's true. Human nature is to be biased.
Yeah, scientists, a true scientist wouldn't go after science in order to explain something away, or wouldn't just jump to another theory because he's trying to disprove creation. A true scientist would look for evidence that would support a theory, and if he can't find that evidence, he changes his theory.
Let me just comment real quickly. Dr. Gould said that just the opposite of what you said. He said that he was raised on his father's knee as a Marxist, and that the appeal that paleontology had for him was because it was such a good explanation away. Again, looking at Karl Marx, who wanted to dedicate his book to Charles Darwin, who found in Darwin's belief system a reasonable scientific basis for his sociological theories. So while that's good, several scientists have noted that theories are not or rather that data is not interpreted absent of theories, that there's always a prejudice that's involved. And that's true for everyone, and I hate to admit it, I'm prejudiced also. We all bring a certain preconceived notion, some presuppositions into whatever we examine. So while it's nice to say, gee, scientists are these objective, wonderful people, scientists do outstanding work. I have tremendous respect. I'd like to think that I'm a scientist. My undergraduate degree's in chemistry. I have a minor in math and physics. But the truth of the matter is that we don't see 100% objectivity, and more, what we're seeing is a bias in the scientific community, a censorship, and if you will, a chastening of those who don't follow a certain paradigm. And that's been commented on. In fact, I have an article here from Scientific American.
Yeah, but that's not science, though.
Yeah.
Well, that's what these guys are saying. A lot of what's being called science is scientism, and that it's being reflected in the journals.
Well, that's something different. That's not science.
Well, I would say that true science, like you're saying, is objective, but the founders of modern science were creationists and Christians, and now the evolutionists take over. You're not taught creation evidence is here. You're not taught 200 young Earth evidence is here. You're taught the Earth is billions of years old. We're an accident from chemicals. We evolved from an ape, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, all that junk. And you're never told that this stuff has been disproved. That the emphasis is never on the hoax of the Piltdown Man, the hoax of the Nebraska Man, the evidence that goes against Lucy, the evidence of the Neanderthal Man being modern European, or that Cro-Magnon drew self-portraits of himself on a cave, and he was very sophisticated. If we didn't know Aborigines existed, the Aborigine people existed now, and we found their skull, people would be touting it as a missing link. You see what I'm saying? There's variation within kind. There's tall, there's big dogs, there's little dogs, there's different kinds of dogs, but they're all dogs. God created the dog kind. And then you can breed off of that, but there's only a certain amount of genetic information in which you can go to. That is an evolution.
What Professor Kenyon of San Francisco said when they ran him out of his professorship, because he recanted. What he says is that scientific information does not interpret itself. Okay, so there's a bias there. Some professors are more educated than others, right? So they look at it very differently. Other professors are leaning towards their papers to be published, and like the Big Bang Theory, I saw a professor get up on TV and said, "The Big Bang Theory's been proven." And the next guy got up and said, "Gee, it's still alive." I went, huh? They looked at the same evidence and came up with different theories. And what I'm saying is that science does not interpret itself, people do. And it's not in a vacuum. And Kenyon lost his professorship because he recounted on his book, Microevolution Biology, and they kicked him out. Why was that? Why did Gentry lose his post when he refuted the radiometric dating by the palladium halos? Well, I'm saying is that when somebody comes against the tide, they're stomped on and they're rent out. But I'd just like to read what Gould said here. He says, in 1977, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret of paleontology. To preserve our favorite account of evolution by natural selection, we view our data as so bad. He says we view, science interprets it as so bad that we never see the very process we profess to study. And I went to this university back in 1970s, didn't do too well, but I'm telling you that they told me that there's all transitional forms, and when Gould was refuting them in his own papers, and they were saying there was. And they can say right now, all you guys go in there, and show me transitional forms when nobody in the right mind would say it's undisputed, but you say they are.
The fact is, there should be millions of transitional forms. You shouldn't have to just go, aha, aha, we found Archaeopteryx, which is just a bird. You should say, oh, there's transitional forms, trillions of them. No, every one gets disproved. Yes, sir.
Actually, the point I wanted to make with the first question, which I got the response that I wanted to hear, was that Gould wasn't refuting evolution. He was simply pointing out that science doesn't fully understand the mechanism yet. Okay, enough on that topic because you've gone on for about 10 minutes. The second question I have is in response to the second gentleman's comment that we don't have organs that don't work, or we don't have half eyes or whatever. How about the appendix?
The appendix?
The appendix.
Yeah, the appendix is real important from a medical standpoint as a lymph node inflammatory organ at a very young age of life. Some recent medical data also seems to indicate that towards middle age, after 45-ish, 50-ish, the appendix again becomes important as a lymph node.
If it's important, then why do people who have it removed get along fine without it?
And again, the recent medical data showed that maybe those people don't. It's not that you can't live without a finger. You can still get along fine without a finger, but it's not an optimal design. At a very, very young age, to have an optimal design, working a functional appendix is very, very important. Possibility that at an older age, the appendix again becomes important as a lymph organ.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just make a comment also? This just goes to show us one of the limitations of science. Science never knows everything. And Sir Karl Popper, who's been called the greatest philosopher of science who ever lived, said this is why science can never prove anything. We can maybe disprove things, but he said that science can never prove anything because we don't know everything. And that's what makes science fun. That's what makes it exciting, is that there's something always changing, that there's new data that we can find tomorrow that'll completely overturn something that we had thought was a law of science. But being that we need to understand the limitation of science. The good thing about history is that history doesn't have that limitation. George Washington, President of the United States, that's a fact. Jesus Christ, resurrected from the dead, historical fact. The implication of that second fact is what's real important, because it provides what you and me and everyone else needs: cure for death. And that's the most important thing that anybody finds, because death is the thing that's going to come and confront everybody.
Okay, can you hear me? I think that using the argument that science is not always objective to prove that your beliefs are the truth is completely hypocritical. And wait, one more thing. Okay, as far as the way things work on this planet, where we came from, what happens to us after we die, there are more opinions and people's viewpoints than one, science and evolution, and two, Christianity. You're not taking into consideration other religions of the world, other people's beliefs, and saying that science doesn't know all the facts doesn't mean that you do.
And I agree with that. Don't run away. Let me just point out this. Your first point, I think you misunderstood. I'm not saying that science is not objective and therefore that proves what we're saying is true. That's not it at all. I'm saying that scientists have admitted that they are not objective in what they do, if they really want to get honest, that all science is that way, and that's a limitation of science. And that's all that I want to point out. Not to bash science, but just to point out that it does have a limitation. It's not God. It's not a final authority. Eric J. Lerner, in his book, The Big Bang Never Happened, made the statement right at the very beginning: there are no final answers in science. And that's all that I'm saying, that even scientists, when they are trying to be objective, do show bias. And it's a well-recognized phenomena. Many people have gone back and re-examined data and interpretations of the data and said, gee, you know, what we have here is a biased opinion that's in it. The second thing you said about many opinions, I can't deny that that's true. My question would be, what does the evidence show? And I would come back to the evidence from history of the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ. One man in point-time history said, listen, I am God, I have a cure for death, I will offer it free of charge, and I will present a proof that I really am God and that I do have power over death. Now, if you think you need a cure for death, and you do, then that's all that Jesus Christ offers, and that's what biblical Christianity offers. That is the main message of it. And that's the question I would say is, in all the other opinions, look at the facts, look at the evidence, and see if they can present some real hard facts to substantiate it.
Okay, so are you saying that your opinion is not biased? Are you saying that then the viewpoint of Christianity is not biased? Because if you subject your theory of creationism and of the resurrection of Jesus Christ to the same kind of scrutiny that you're subjecting scientific theories of evolution, I think you're going to have a very hard time coming up with the same sort of hardcore evidence.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ has been, especially bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ, the historical accuracy of both the Old and the New Testament, the archaeological accuracy of it, and the scientific accuracy has recently been challenged. But the archaeological accuracy, the manuscript accuracy, and the historical accuracy of the resurrection have been challenged for well over 2,000 years. Let me just finish now.
The greatest challenges come from the hostile critics like Simon Greenleaf, who is an expert in legal evidence. He wrote 2 volumes on what constitutes legal evidence in a court of law, and his conclusion is that the bodily resurrection is a fact of history. Now you can take, and you should do this, you should take each individual argument against the resurrection and see if it's valid, and look at both sides and see if it can be explained away. I've done that, and I'll tell you, based upon my research, I am of the opinion that beyond any shadow of a doubt, the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ is a fact of history. But I would challenge you this: if you haven't looked at all the evidence, go ahead and look at it. See if it's there, see if it's real.
Okay, I have to go. I don't have enough to argue about this. Sorry, but there are tons of other religions out there, and millions of people who follow different religions that have billions.
Zillion. Let's say zillion.
They're all right. Who have different opinions of what certain archaeological and historical evidence means in their religion. So,
well, is there such a thing as truth?
Yours is not the only one.
Ma'am, is there such a thing as truth?
Are they all right?
Was David Koresh right? Was Hitler right?
I'm not talking about David Koresh and Hitler.
Well, he's one of the religions. Are they all right? Let's say you go through them one by one.
But what you're saying is that they're not all right because yours is right.
No, logically they can't all be right. They can all be wrong, but they can't all be right. Logically, one of them can be right and the rest can be wrong.
And it must be yours, of course. I don't have time.
If you look in the evidence for the Bible,
and it's 100% accurate in archaeology and 2,000 fulfilled prophecies, and then you look into other religions like, see, this is another thing. People don't want to hear the truth. When you start to, can I give you evidence for creation? People walk away. When I say, can I talk to you about Islam or Buddhism, and let's look at the logical fallacies, or let's look at the fact that the Book of Mormon has no archaeological evidence for all those things that were supposed to happen. When we look at facts, we look at history, and we look at science, we can disprove 99% of the religions. But when you compare it to Christianity, the Bible says there's an intelligent God, a designer God that created the universe. We look at the universe, we see design and creation. We see sinful man. Why do you lock your car doors? Why do you lock your houses? It's because we don't trust one another. And the fact is, God is holy, God is loving, we're loving, there's good people, but we all need a Savior. And God knew that. And there's evidence from history, there's evidence from science. Science is biased. Science believes in evolution now. If you say you're a creationist, you'll be most likely shunned from the scientific community. There is a bias. So let's not fool ourselves thinking we're all objective here. But I believe you can look at the same evidence, and if you and it'll pile up on the side of Christianity, and really there's hardly any, what I would say, real evidence for evolution or the fact that we're just some accidents from chemicals. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. What do you think is the most important aspect of three things? Science, religion, or spirituality?
Dave, you want to talk about that?
Well, I don't believe I can understand your question. What's your question?
What's most important?
Well, a lot of people rate religion real high. I like to tend to be more spiritual than religious, and then their science is kind of a different realm too than either one of those. Something like that,
Just personally for me, is salvation through Jesus Christ. I don't believe anybody can be spiritual without having Jesus Christ as their Savior. We are sinners. We have been separated from a holy God. And we look around and we see there's death and destruction. And so God has not left us without a witness. He has given us a creation that shows His power. But also He sent His Son, God in the flesh. Now, we say we put out the gospel, and you can disagree with it and not believe it or not. But Jesus Christ came and fulfilled prophecies that the hostile witnesses knew that He did. He came and He died on a cross in the open in front of hostile witnesses in the Roman government and the Jewish people and elders that wanted to keep Him in the grave. Now, you certainly know that they could have kept Him in the grave, because His disciples are just poor fishermen and tax collectors and stuff like that. They could have kept Him in the grave, but they couldn't. And Rome wanted to keep Him in the grave because Pontius Pilate didn't want an insurrection, because he'd get in trouble and it might have been his neck. So he had all the evidence was to hold Jesus in that grave. But He came out, and another thing, 40 days afterwards, these men get up and they preach Jesus Christ, whom you crucified, was done in public. There's over 200,000 people in Jerusalem at that time coming for the Feast of Passover, whom was crucified, has risen from the dead. Now, don't you know somebody say, wait a minute. Somebody like on the bicycle would ride up and say, wait a minute, drag him down to the tomb. There he is. He's in the tomb. What about it? Thousands of people, Jews, were saved, and they're excommunicated from the synagogue. They're treated worse than the Romans. Now, why would anybody do that over a lie? All they had to do was go down and say, look, He's in the grave, he's there. And Tacitus, a Roman historian, said that Pontius Pilate crucified Christus. And now, just like Jesus said, is that He be preached in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the world. And Tacitus said this pernicious cult started in Jerusalem, Judea, and now the whole Roman Empire. It's unbelievable. But He was crucified in hostile opposition The Jews disbelieved him, but he said, I come out of the grave. And so that is important. But God has set in the universe laws. Now, he's above his laws, and he's outside the universe, but yet he's personal. And so what it is, the creation shows the power of God, but he doesn't work with us with his power. He works with us with his purpose. His purpose is, when they were going to crucify Jesus, Jesus said, I lay my life down. No man takes away. I could call legion of angels. It's not about power. It's about love. And that's what it was. But when he comes back next time, it's going to be in power. But Christ is the most important thing in this world for anybody. Science is always going to be here. We can look at things because God made a creative order, and you can study it. It's not chaos. You look into the atom, it's formed, there's things you can study. And the human beings are personal relationships. But God is a personal God, but we have offended him by our sin. He is very angry with us, but he sent his son to take our sins on the cross. And he did that publicly. In the middle of Jerusalem, the most religious people in the world, the strongest government in the world, his son was crucified and was laid in the grave, and he rose again. And I solemnly testify that this is the truth of God, and the Holy Spirit bears witness with me that this is the truth in the gospel of God.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I would just like to say Christianity is a relationship, not a religion. A religion is man trying to reach God by rituals and things he makes up and all these works of good righteousness. But a relationship with God is what Christianity really is. You just come to God privately and you talk to him, which is prayer, and you say, Lord, I need you, and I want your free salvation. And you've given me enough evidence to know by beauty, by design, and you read the Word of God, and you read the love of Jesus Christ that he had for people, that God in heaven would come down and be crucified for you. It's unbelievable. Think about it. Now, you know, a lot of people doubt about that because we have a nature to doubt and we have a fallen mind. But if, let's say, one of you died and rose from the dead right here, okay? Let's say, you know, was in the grave 3 days and rose, which no one has, by the way, but let's say it happened. People that didn't see it and people years from now would laugh and scoff and say it never happened. I wasn't there. I didn't see it, so it didn't happen. No matter what evidence you give them, no matter how many eyewitnesses, no matter how many books they write, even the news reports, they would all doubt it. But like we have lots of eyewitness evidence and historical accounts for the resurrection. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question about when Jesus used the word Gehenna, and I was wondering back then in that time period how they looked at that word, how they used that word Gehenna, because I know that I don't know if it's now or back then, it's a temporary hell. And I was wondering what your interpretation of that was concerning an eternal hell or a temporary hell.
The Lord Jesus used that word, that the Gehenna was a valley of Gehenna where they burned refuge, and it was always smoldering and always firing, full of fire. And what you glean from the New Testament is that before the cross there was a place called paradise, and that was where the Old Testament saints went. And in paradise there was a place called Hades where unbelievers went, and they were in Hades. And you can read in Ezekiel where they're in Hades, and as Ezekiel talks about the other kings going down into Hades. But after Jesus Christ rose from the grave, it says in Ephesians that he led captivity free. So now we can go directly into the presence of the Father. But yes, right now there's Hades. That's a temporary place until the great white throne judgment. And after that, they're cast into hell forever, for eternity.
Okay.
Let me finish answering your question. I'm looking up the word eternal in my concordance here. And all through the Old Testament and all the way through the New Testament, you have reference to eternal God, eternal refuge, eternal life. And then you have eternal judgment, eternal sufferings, eternal. So there's eternal on both sides. Our spirit is eternal. It depends on where you're going to spend eternity. That's what it's about. And since God is eternal, and since we have hurt an eternal holy God, what should be the punishment for defiance of that God would be punishment equal to that, which would be an eternal punishment. And we actually, by rejecting Jesus Christ, we send ourselves to hell. God's offering it by a free gift. He's done it all for us. You just have to accept it. You say no, no, no all the way till you die, then who sent who to hell?
Okay. Also, I have a question about, there's an interpretation that maybe hell hasn't happened yet, because when Jesus will come back and separate the goats from the sheep or whatever, and as if, on the day of judgment, and so...
Yeah, well, Jesus told a story, and he used real people. He talked about the rich man and Lazarus. And the rich man was in Hades and was in torment in this fire. And he could see across a great gulf in the paradise and see Abraham and Lazarus. And he says, let Lazarus come down and just dip his finger in cool water and place it on my tongue. Right. But in Revelation it says that, and the sea gave up their dead, which were in, he's talking about the second resurrection, and Hades gave up the dead. See, people with God are alive. We're spiritually alive, but if you're separated from God, you're spiritually dead. And Hades is going to give up the dead, and they're going to stand before the white throne judgment. Then it says that death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire, and that is hell, eternity forever. But everybody that has been ever born on this face of this earth is going to stand before Jesus Christ and give an account for the rejection either of the creation or of the gospel, and is going to be found guilty, because God has shown in our hearts. We excuse our sins, or we say it's all right. Everybody goes, this is right, this is wrong. That shows we're under the judgment of God. If there's no God, there's no right or wrong. But everybody, even the atheist, goes, well, that's right and that's wrong. That shows that God has put a conscience in everybody's hearts and in their minds. And so Paul says, when you condemn others, you condemn yourself. And that's what it is. That's why everybody, even me, when I was even religious as going to church as a young man, that I believed in certain things, believed in God, I was still going to hell because I hadn't repented of my sins and placed my trust in Jesus Christ. And with that, I'm imputed with the righteousness of Christ, because He's the only one that has ever fulfilled the moral law of God. And because of that, He took my place on the cross. He was innocent, and He died and shed His blood, and He was buried, and He rose again. So when I place my trust in Him, God the Father imputes Christ's righteousness to me. So when I stand before God, it's not in my own righteousness, it's in Jesus' righteousness, and I'm counted acquitted, even though I'm a wretched sinner.
Okay. Yeah, all right. That answers my question. I just have one more question about the Trinity. When Jesus says that, well, somebody calls Him good, and He says, I'm not good but the Father alone. And I have a hard time understanding that, knowing about the Trinity. I don't know. The Trinity I have a hard time understanding because I know the views of other religions that it's paganism, believing in three gods or God in three forms. So if you explain that to me.
Okay, is that one thing is that the Trinity is very hard to comprehend, but we can apprehend it. The first rule of debate is not to accuse somebody of something they don't believe. Not that you are, but we don't believe in three gods, and we don't. No, I'm just saying it for the audience. And we don't believe in God in three forms. We believe there is one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, He is one. But also we believe that God has revealed Himself in that one essence in nature, three distinct persons, not like Dale and Mike and David, but three distinct persons. Distinction does not mean separation. Okay? And each one love each other. They talk to each other. The Father loves the Son loves the Father, and they send the Holy Spirit, and He won't speak of Himself, but of His own. So we see that in the New Testament. So when the young ruler came to Jesus and said, "Good teacher, what must I do to have eternal life?" And Jesus said, "Are you calling me good?" He put him on the spot. He said, "Only God is good. So do you believe that I am the Christ? Do you believe that I am the Son of God?" That's what He's saying. He says, "There's only God is good, but do you believe that I'm God?" But the guy didn't go forward. He just said that I've done all the law throughout my youth. And Jesus said, "Well, that's good that you've done that, but there's one thing you haven't done, is that you haven't given all you own and follow me. Not that, you can sell your car and your house and go to heaven, but that's one thing that was keeping him from loving the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your being. And that was the first and greatest commandment, and he had broken that by being a rich man and holding on to that. And Jesus went right to the deal, but he went, as a good rabbi said, oh, you call me good? There's only one good but God, or you call me God? It's what he put him on the hot spot. But he didn't even approach that.
Let's see. All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, I'd like to tell you Dr. Girouard is speaking over here in the six-pack in the middle building over there next to Bats at the Mez's Hall in room 202, 7 to 9 tonight. You're all invited. He's going to do a presentation on creation and give you a refutation of evolution and creation evidences. So tell your friends and come on out. We're going to have a question and answer period afterwards, a short presentation and question and answer period over in the Mez's Hall next to Bats in room 202 tonight. Also, we're going to be out here tomorrow afternoon, 11:30 to 1:30 again. So tell your friends and come on out and let's dialogue. Let's talk about evidences for God. Let's give us your evidences for evolution. But again, we're on your side. We want your eyes to be open. We want you to hear evidences. You're not taught in school. You're not brainwashed creationism. You're brainwashed evolution in this school. You're told you're from a monkey. You're told you're from chemicals. And a lot of people don't want to hear the evidence because they want to do their own thing. I want to be a homosexual. I want to be a child molester. I want to be involved in fornicating and drugs and whatever else I want to do. So I don't want to be accountable to God. I don't want to change. I don't want to bend the knee to Jesus Christ. It comes down to our ego. And so what we do is we play hear no evidence, see no evidence, speak no evidence. And we use the schools and we use maybe the Catholic religion and we use even different religions as a way to hide from the truth, or to say it's kind of a cop-out. Instead of coming and surrendering your life to Jesus Christ, we use all different means, and we try to avoid it at any cost, mostly to explain God away by evolution. And the other thing would be to be involved in a false religion. Then I don't have to think. I can follow Muhammad. I can follow David Koresh or Jim Jones or Hitler. I don't have to think. I just give blind obedience. We have a microphone here, and we encourage you to come up and ask questions about the Bible, the existence of God, or evolution, creationism. It's open, so anybody, come on up and give us a question.
I got a question.
You got a question?
Yeah. Mike, why do the news media and Time Magazine and everybody else still say the Big Bang Theory is a fact, even though the scientists say it's not? But I read Time Magazine when the satellite went up, and they said this is a fact beyond disproof.
Yeah. I got another one. Why they teach the fact, or not the fact, but the hoax that we evolve in the embryo stages from a fish to an amphibian to a... Man, when that thing was disproved back in the 1800s, I'd like to know about why they still teach that.
Big Bang, if you saw Discover Magazine for, I think it was for March, had a very big article on there about how some recent evidence that was first published in Nature magazine puts very, very severe constraints in the Big Bang, and it's just about been the final nail in the coffin for the Big Bang. Some observations from the Hubble telescope show us that, based upon the Big Bang theory itself, the universe is only 8 to 10 billion years old. Now, I don't believe in these old ages, but that's what the article was saying. That's what the research showed. Problem is that you have structures in the universe that require anywhere from 14 to 20 billion years to form. So if you've got a universe that can be no older than 10 billion years, but you have structures that form by natural processes and require at least 14 billion years, something's obviously very, very wrong with your cosmology. That's what Discover Magazine did. They did an overview of all of the problems with the Big Bang and some of the unanswerable questions that the Big Bang is not getting closer to but further away from. And I think it was Newsweek magazine about 3 weeks ago had an article basically on the same thing. When the Kobe satellite went up, it was looking for fluctuations in the microwave background radiation. I was always taught that the background microwave radiation was absolute proof of a Big Bang. Well, wait a minute, that's not true. The purpose, one of the main purposes for the Hubble telescope was the fact that we see a universe that's lumpy bumpy. It's not smooth. We see stars and galaxies of stars and clusters of galaxies. We see a great wall of galaxies. Things are not spread out evenly. They're in certain segments. Therefore, the microwave background radiation ought to be lumpy bumpy, just like the universe. It's not. It's smooth, no matter in what direction we look. So the Hubble telescope was up there looking for fluctuations in the cosmic microwave background radiation. Without those fluctuations, something is radically wrong with the Big Bang Theory. And when it was finally disclosed, hey, we think we see fluctuations, it not only made the headlines of Time, it not only made the headlines of USA Today, but it was the big news in science. The thing they didn't tell you is that these alleged fluctuations were 1/10,000th of what the sensitivity of the measuring instrument was. In other words, it was like if you had a ruler that the smallest measure was 1/16th of an inch, and you were telling me that you were able to detect the difference in 1/10,000th of an inch. The instruments were just not that sensitive. And people have gone back, especially Smoot, who made the original announcement, and have said, well, you know, it's a statistical thing that we believe we see, but it may not really be there. It may just be noise in the instrument. So it's interesting that that persists. The recapitulation theory, it's incredible. Scientist after scientist, evolutionary scientist after evolutionary scientist has said, listen, this is not true. Sir Gavin De Beer said, seldom has any theory done so much harm to science as the recapitulation theory. Ernst Haeckel admitted several years after he first published his drawings in 1868 that they were fraudulent drawings. And yet, Langman in his textbook of medical embryology says that the theory of embryological recapitulation is false, in spite of the fact that many evolutionists have looked at this theory and said, listen, it just doesn't support evolution, it's not real. It persists in high school textbooks, college textbooks. I was taught it in college, I was taught it in medical school. And yet, if you read what the experts, if you read what the evolutionary experts, don't read what a creationist says, read what the evolutionary biologists say, they say, listen, recapitulation has nothing whatsoever to do with biology. And if you think about it, why should it? Why should you go through recapitulate embryological development as a proposed evolutionary development? Why should that be? That just doesn't make any sense.
I was proposed a question. Are you finished? I'm sorry. That the person asked, what difference does it make if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old rather than just 5,000 years old? What is the difference as far as God is concerned here?
Okay, I'm going to give the general answer, and then we'll give the complete answer with Dr. Girouard here. But the evolutionist needs time. We have over 200 dating methods that you're never told about that say that we have a young Earth in the thousands of years old. Evolution needs time, because if I say if a worm turns into a man in this amount of time, you know, a couple weeks, a few years, no one's going to buy it. You need that magic dust of time to take it out in fantasy land. Then anything's possible with time, right? Time plus chance equals anything's possible. Not really true, because you can tumble parts of a car engine in a washing machine forever, and it's not going to assemble itself into a car engine. It's really very good analogy between the human life and the design of cells and plants and multiple organisms and things like that. But basically, the time is needed for evolution.
From a scientific standpoint, it's a big issue because I want to know what's true. Time is the foundation of evolution. It's the God of evolution. Without adequate time, Darwin realized he couldn't propose his theory or his belief. If you don't have adequate amounts of time, then evolution could never occur. And from a scientific standpoint, I'd like to know what's true and what's not true. If there are alternate evidences that show a very young age of the Earth and the universe, well then let's put that on the table and let's look at it. Let's see who has more assumptions, who has fewer assumptions, what assumptions are necessary. So from a scientific standpoint, it's essential for evolution. It's important just to know what is truth, because that's what we're looking for in science. From a theological standpoint, from a biblical standpoint, the clear common sense statements of the Bible indicate that the creation is young, in the order of thousands of years, not millions of years. And to try to start making words say what they don't say makes the whole Bible confusing. In other words, if the days of Genesis are not 6 solar days, then what does eternal life mean? If day doesn't mean day, then how do we know what eternal life means? So words have no meaning whatsoever. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm curious, are any of you gentlemen responsible for this little green pamphlet? Okay, well, I can address this directly to you. You say here that in 1973, Don Johanson found a knee joint with an angle, and then in 1974, piece of a skeleton, this being Lucy, over 1.5 miles further away and 300 feet lower in the ground. And then you have the parenthetical statement, that's a big ape. Seeming to imply that Don Johanson suggested that these two skeletal bits belong to the same individual. Now, I'm very, very familiar with Don Johanson's work, and I know for a fact that he never implied that. In fact, he was very, very concise about stating that these were two different individuals. So my question to you is, are you a liar or are you just ignorant?
No, and I'm aware that Johanson has, in his lectures, very, very strongly intimates that they are from the same individual. And so I would disagree with you on that. And I'm not lying, and I'm not trying to deceive anybody. Oh, I know the facts, and I listed the facts there in the article. And I'm not trying to impugn Johanson's integrity, but since you brought up mine, I will say this, that in his book, Jim Fix, and I can't think of his first name right offhand, said that Lucy struck a new low in scientific credibility. So he went through and he gave a detailed account of Johansson's storytelling, as he put it, of the Lucy finds, etc., and he strongly questioned Johansson's integrity.
Well, he's a famous paleontologist, this Fix guy, right?
Fix is a newspaper writer, but he took...
So what are his credentials here for criticizing Johansson's work?
Well, because he took the data that was associated with the find, he took the story that Johansson had recounted in various places, and he put it together and he said, here's the story. And it comes across as a story. So just if Fix was a garbage collector, it wouldn't make him any less qualified to comment upon the data and the facts surrounding the discovery.
Well, the fact that, I mean, I live with this material. I do this for a living. And I have never seen anything Johansson does that implies that he thinks those belong to the same individual.
Well, all I can say is that you're of a different opinion from Fix. I've spoken to people who have been in his lectures that say that he strongly suggests that, and that's what led to the inquiry at the 1989 presentation that he gave at the University of Missouri. And it was also very interesting that at that presentation he refused to answer a direct question 3 times as to how close to the original kneecap he had found the individual. Now, it's not very carefully brought out in his book. It's buried in a very small paragraph. So to say that Dr. Johansson is not trying to be deceitful, I'm not going to say that he is. I'm saying there's the facts and evidence. You have a different opinion. You know the man. I hope and pray that he is a very qualified and very reputable scientist.
I suspect that what's happening here is that you guys are following typical creationist doctrine, which is to take things that scientists say completely out of context. For instance, Don Johanson may have said something along, in fact, I'm sure he has said something along the lines of AL-129, which is the first fossil knee joint, is very similar to AL-288, which is Lucy, so similar that they could conceivably be of the same individual if they hadn't been found 1.5 miles away from each other.
Well, we're gonna talk about that and what Oxnard said, but I want to say, speaking of, I guess you're going to say what evolutionists always say, and that's that, well, of course you're familiar with the Piltdown Man and the great science behind that. I hope you will admit that was a hoax, right?
Of course Piltdown was a hoax.
Of course it was a hoax. And Neanderthal Man, and they drew, well sir, let me finish. And Neanderthal Man was built a whole drawing of cavemen from a single tooth, and later was found to be the tooth of a pig. Now,
Nebraska Man.
Would you call that, is that great evolutionary science?
It was paleontologists that discovered that Nebraska Man was a pig as well.
Right, it was a pig. Why did they draw an ape-man family from it?
It was a newspaper illustrator who drew it.
And they used it in the Scopes trial to get creation taken out of the school, sir, and I don't think that's very good science. And also all transitional forms. Now here's the problem. You should have millions of ape men, millions and millions of transitional forms. Why are you touting this one that looks like a pygmy chimp?
Once again, it's obvious that you're incredibly ignorant of the fossil record. There are thousands and thousands of fossil representatives of fossil humans.
Oh, there are? Okay, well, you're disagreeing with some of the greatest paleontologists in the world.
Are you smarter than Colin Patterson of the British Museum?
No, I wouldn't claim to be any more intelligent than Colin Patterson. However, I can take any one of you gentlemen over to my lab anytime here and show you a small fraction of the thousands of hominid fossils that are available, and we have hundreds of them.
Are you saying they're non-disputed?
What do you mean non-disputed?
Do other scientists dispute you that they're not missing links or transitionals?
Scientists don't deal with the term missing link.
Well, Colin Patterson said there's no transitional forms whatsoever. They're not disputed.
Once again, you're taking things out of context. Colin Patterson is a cladist, and cladists have a very particular...
Oh, I see. It's your interpretation, though. What about Gould? You want me to read Gould's quote?
No, there's no... You guys are impugning people for doing science. The truth is...
No, I'm just asking you. You're going to take me over there and show me some skulls that you have no idea if they're missing transitional forms or not. You're just pouring your ideas into it.
How would I demonstrate they were a transitional form?
Well,
how would we demonstrate that they're not?
Okay, Oxnard, who is an evolutionist, looked at all the bones of the Australopithecines and said it's not even anywhere linked to humans.
Okay, once again, you're misunderstanding what Oxnard said.
Go ahead. Tell me what he said.
Oxnard said that
we misunderstand every one of them.
Including the Afarensis, was distinct from the humans as they are from the apes, that they are not evolving to anything. He went on to say that fossil finds from such places as Sterkfontein and Olduvai are not evolving towards humans. So Oxnard has done multivariate computer statistical analysis with the bones. He's measured them. He's done the work, and he totally disagrees with you. Now, I choose to believe what Oxnard says. Oxnard makes his living that way. Okay, and you make your living that way.
There are hundreds of individuals who make their livings this way, and you've picked out the one or two that agree with you.
And again, these people are very well respected. They don't go out and dig up the bones, but it doesn't mean that you're right. You do have scientists, credible scientists, who have studied the exact same data, who have done possibly more detailed studies than you have, more sophisticated studies, and they thoroughly disagree with what you say.
What did I say?
That there are hundreds of fossil hominids.
There are hundreds of fossil hominids. I can take you over to my lab and show you some.
Intermediate hominids leading up to a human.
I would make very little in the way of claims about this individual is ancestral to this individual. However, the majority of the evidence available to us does point that way.
And I would say that people like Lord Sir Zolly Zuckerman disagree. Zuckerman said if man evolved from an ape-like creature, he did so without leaving a trace of that evidence in the fossil record.
Yeah, he said that in 1925, was it?
No, he said it in 76.
Let me see. Now, we're not disputing that you're an intelligent person. We're just saying that the interpretation of the evidence, when you look into the supposed missing links, which I submit to you, there should be zillions of them, and you should see a transgression or a transition in the fossil record for every species.
Why should there be millions of them?
Because we have trillions and trillions of fossils all over the world found in the sedimentary layers laid down by the flood. That's why. We have trillions of fossils. Don't you think that some of those fossils would be in the process of changing into a new species and they would be fossilized? Now you're claiming these, I gave an example before. You could get an ape, or you could get an extinct ape. They've already, built a family from a tooth, so I guess they can do anything. But they get a knee joint or an arm, or even, let's say, an aborigine. Let's say we didn't know aborigines existed. You find that skull, aborigines are now extinct. Aha, we got a missing link. No, it's just a variation within the humankind. It's not a transitional form. And I must point out to you, sir, that a transitional form, every one you find is a fully functional creature.
Of course they are.
It's not in between, like transitional forms should be changing from an arm to a wing, from a fin to an arm. Half an eye should be found, or the forming of a third of a liver. But everything in your body and everything in every creature has to all work at once, or it doesn't work.
So you mentioned arm to wing. So let's talk about Archaeopteryx for a second. I suppose you're going to tell me that's a wing.
It is a wing.
I'll have
it's got feathers.
Dr.
I got a picture of it.
Speak what the scientists say about Archaeopteryx, and they just got together in 1984. But let me just read you Stephen Day Gould. You know him. He is a good scientist, would you say? Harvard? He knows as much as you do?
Far more.
Far more. Can I read what he said in 1977? Okay. No, can I read it to you? Okay, he says, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil records persists as a trade secret of paleontology to preserve our favorite account of evolution by natural selection, we view our data so bad that we never see the very process we profess to say at the microphone.
We have here, did he leave already?
Yeah.
We have here the fossil picture of Archaeopteryx, and you can see complete feathers on it. And I think about everybody now, there's a few paleontologists holding out, but even paleontologists and a lot of other scientists, especially scientists that are specializing in birds, they will tell you that Archaeopteryx was just a bird. It had feathers, it flew, it had a beak, and show up the picture there. I don't know if you can see that.
Artist rendition.
But
Go ahead, do what Fiduci said.
Fiduci.
Let me just point out something about similarities in skeletal structure. Just because two things are similar doesn't mean that they're related. If you look at the fossilized skull of a marsupial thylacine, the Tasmanian wolf, it's a marsupial, it's a mammal, but it is not related closely in an evolutionary standpoint to a placental dog. And yet if you examine the bone structure of the skulls of the body, they're virtually indistinguishable. Dr. Michael Denton's done this work, and he says unless you're an expert, you really can't tell the difference. So we have a problem in evolution called convergence, a parallelism, where things look exactly alike but are not related even by an evolutionary standpoint. How can we look at skulls of so-called hominids, which are different and are noticeably different, our bone structure, which is noticeably different, and say that they're related when things that are identical, we know from living organisms, are not at all related? With regard to Archaeopteryx, Archaeopteryx has been argued about being a bird or a reptile or whatever. Again, Dr. Stephen Jay Gould, he's one of the most respected paleontologists in this country, said that transitional forms, smooth transitions between Blau plane do not exist.
He went on to say that curious mosaics like Archaeopteryx do not count. Gould rejects Archaeopteryx as a transitional form. Alan Fiducia, Science, volume 259, 5th of February 1993, looked at Archaeopteryx's foot, and he said, you know what? The thing's a bird. In fact, it's a perching bird. And he made this statement, which I love.
It kind of gets a little nasty. He said, quote, paleontologists have tried to turn Archaeopteryx into an earthbound feathered dinosaur, but it's not. It is a bird, a perching bird, and no amount of paleobabble is going to change that, unquote. Now, Ostrom, who's supposed to be the expert in avian paleontology, says that, hey, Fiducia knows what he's talking about. He could be absolutely right. It has a mosaic of features. It has no transitional features. It is not a transitional bird.
Well, again, you have a very complex design in this creature. It's just another creature. You know how complex a feather is? Feather is designed for flight. And it's got a hollow bone. It's very, very complex. Not to mention the workings of the bird brain to be able to fly and all of the organs to maintain life. An incredible amount of design and order. It's fully functional. It's not a transitional form. All its organs are working. It has claws. It has beaks. It has eyes. It has feathers. So the paleontologist goes, well, no, what happened was dinosaurs, which, they say scales turned into feathers. Scales are a fold in the skin. And the dinosaur started hopping, and he kept hopping and hopping until one day he turned into feathers and flew. Now, think about it. This is faith. That's not science. That's what we see every time. We see everything fully functional for its environment. Go ahead, sir.
What does the Bible say about premarital sex?
It says that it's wrong. It says it's called fornication, and that it is a sin, and a sin for which Jesus Christ died and paid for, and that we are designed, male and female, to fall in love and live together and have a family and submit to one another and grow as one. Not to be like, hey, let's sample everybody and use everybody and get diseases.
What's the exact definition of fornication? Is it just sexual intercourse, or does it include anal intercourse?
It's sexual immorality. It's sex out of wedlock and so forth.
In the Greek, it's all sexual immorality, as Jesus talked about. That include homosexuality, sex out of marriage, all types of sexual perversions. Pornea. The Greek word is pornea, where we get pornography.
I see. Pretty neat. Huh. What's the government's aspect? You think the government, what kind of role do you think government should have in religion in the United States these days?
Well, God, after the flood, instituted government to restrain evil. Even though government can be evil, it still restrains evil. As you can see in Russia, Stalin and all his throw-offs were very evil, but they restrained a lot of evil in the country of robbery and stuff like that. And now it's going pretty bad, but God says He'll judge the governments, all the nations like a drop in the bucket. But as a Christian, I'm under authority to our government. As long as they don't make me stop preaching the gospel or close my church down or anything like that. But I believe Christians can be a senator, all that, but I do not believe in a theocracy. It's the worst thing could ever happen to America. But what we would want is people being saved. And when people get saved, they begin to live right. They don't do harm to their neighbor. Relativism, when I was just a good old boy or something, I would do what I thought was right, but also I do harm to neighbors when I wanted to. But now as a Christian, every man is my neighbor, and I do no harm to him because Jesus Christ changed my life. But I do not think that government can make people do anything. They can propose, but only a changed life through Jesus Christ can make a person to a Christian.
Okay. Could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of the situation over in Russia with the new fighting? I think it's between I can't remember. Chechnya, yeah.
Well, I think it's terrible. The Russian government says that the Chechnya government was supporting gangsters, which control almost 35 to 45% of the new entrepreneurs that are coming around, and they were using these gangs out of Chechnya, were very vicious gangs, to kill people in Russia, and so they used that mainly as an excuse to go down there. Then it got all out of hand, and once he committed, he couldn't stop. And I think it's a terrible thing myself, but Jesus said there's going to be wars and rumors of wars and kingdom against kingdom. Now it's funny that the critic says, there's no more kingdoms and all that. Isn't it amazing that all these countries are dividing up into their kingdoms now? Czech and Slovak and all these little kingdoms, and they're going against each other, just like Jesus said that in the last days. And imagine this, Jesus Christ in Palestine, a backwater of the Roman Empire, He came and said, in the last days, people are going to say, I am the Christ, I am Jesus. Can you imagine that? He had 70 followers and 12 disciples, and this man said that in the whole world, people are going to come and say, I'm Jesus Christ, and they do it. That I'm the Messiah. And how would he know that? That's a pretty big, ego, but yet we know by Scriptures that he was the most homeless man in the world, that he laid down his life for sinners like us. Can you imagine that? And he said that in the end time, people would be hating people, and their hearts would wax cold, in kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation. And there would be diseases and plagues, and everybody be hating each other. He says, and also that he's going to set Jerusalem as a stumbling block to the world. Can you imagine that? Jerusalem, all the world's eyes is on Jerusalem. Not only that, Yahweh, the gods of the Old Testament, said, I'm going to scatter the Jews throughout the world. No one can do this but me. I'll scatter them through the whole world, and then I'll whistle, and I'll bring them back right under your noses, and you won't be able to stop it. And he says, all your eyes are going to be on Jerusalem, and all the world's attention is focusing sometime on Jerusalem, because that's where the next big war is going to come. And Jesus said to Paul says, when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction is going to come upon them. And you see it happening right before your eyes, but you're willfully ignorant that you won't even believe it, that the Jews have came back to their land. Ezekiel said, look at these bones, these dead bones. And God says, prophesy to those bones and they'll come together. The Jewish nation will come together and come back into Israel. In 1948 it did. Do you realize that the Jews went to their death under Hitler, marched into the ovens? 6 million of them were dead. And then in 1948 they defeated armies surrounding them.
6 days.
6 days. They defeated them, and now they're one of the strongest armies in the world. Can you imagine that? Just 10, 20 years later, they were walking into ovens, but now they're the strongest military power in the Mideast, and they have nuclear weapons. and they said no more Masada.
$3 billion a year for about 50 years that's going to happen.
Oh, really? Why don't we give $100 million to Chile, and I can get the LA police force and go down there and wax them?
Here, give me the thing.
100 million is a big difference from 3 billion.
Well, give them $3 billion. Can you imagine? You know what the size of Israel is?
Yeah, we give over $1,000 to every man, woman, and child in Israel. Of course they're going to do damn good. But why don't we give $500,000 in the 80s to all of Black Africa per year?
Well, let me ask you a question. How much money does Saudi Arabia have?
A hell of a lot.
Okay, then obviously money's not the issue, is it?
Yeah, U.S. aid is.
But is money the issue? As you're stating your logical question, is the money the issue?
It really helps to have a big military.
Does Israel have more money than the Arab nations together, OPEC?
I don't know, but the Arab nations aren't together. They're divided, aren't they?
Well, they are together when they go against Israel.
1967.
They were together when they went against Israel. They were surrounded on all sides in the Yom Kippur War, and they should have lost that war. That's okay. Well, I will come and we'll talk about this because I know quite a bit about it, but just shouting back and forth. But I just want to make a point that money is not the issue. Okay, your question?
Would you have evolution taken out of public schools and creation replaced with it?
No, I think the evidence should be taught side by side. However, I believe that there really is no evidence for evolution at all.
But isn't creation a religious concept?
No, I think evolution is a religious concept because it's built on faith without evidence. I think you can teach creation without bringing religion into it by saying that some deity, whatever, that you wouldn't specify which, God. You would say a creator. We have evidence of design of creation in the creation and in the evidence we see. And you look at the evidence, and the evolutionist interprets it one way, tries to fit it into his model. I believe it has a lot of holes. And you can take the evidence of design and order and no transitional forms and evidence of the flood and all these sort of things, and it fits perfectly in the creation model. Hey, teach them side by side, I don't care. But why censor out creation, sir?
Doesn't creation give us an idea that we have dominion over the animals and such things in the earth?
Well, I believe dominion means responsibility to take care of our planet, and I think that's a good thing. We should take care of, with pollution and ecology and life. I think there should be respect of life. The Bible, not creationism, but the Bible says that we have dominion over the earth. And if you look around you don't see too many apes building civilizations and coming up with inventions, and there is a great dominion man does have over the other creation.
So it's not creation that says that man has dominion over the animals?
No, it's the Bible.
It's the Bible. God says in Genesis.
Oh, it's the Bible. So we don't include that in the creation philosophy, though?
You don't have to include that in the creation philosophy. Or in the creation...
But what if you don't believe that a God created the planet and you go to school? Wouldn't you be offended if somebody was trying to tell you that your beliefs are wrong?
And I think a lot of people who are Bible-believing Christians are offended when they go to school and they're presented with just one way. But let me ask you this. Many evolutionists have pointed out that there are only two opinions. You can either have creation or evolution. There is no third option that anyone knows of. Would you agree with that?
Some would, yeah. So I would agree with that.
Should we teach truth in school?
If you knew what the truth was, yes.
Okay. If the evidence and the truth is that there is a creator, an intelligent...
That's what you believe, and that's your personal truth. I think that's a good thing.
Let me just do this. If the truth, as Dr. Francis Schaeffer would call it, is that there is a creator who created it, should we present the evidence for that? If that is true, in school, wherever.
And the weakest link there is the if. And it's the if. So the if, I'd say no. If it was a conditional on an if, I'd say no. Because I don't believe that there is a one single truth, because I see different people have...
So you're biased, and you're going to censor out all other evidence.
Isn't a bias a personal truth?
Wait. So hold on. So why should your bias be censored out of the school? Why should your bias be the only one taught in schools? You see what I'm saying? Is that if we're going to present, let me just finish the statement. If it is true that everything was created by an intelligent creator, maybe not the God of the Bible, okay? But if it's true that that this is a creation and not a process of random natural processes, if random natural processes could never bring any of this into being, then I believe that we have an obligation, since that's the purpose in schools is to teach truth, not error, then that we should present the truth. If the evidence can have more than one interpretation, then we should present the evidence with both interpretations, especially where there are philosophical implications involved. And that's why I advocate teaching evolution alongside creation. I think the greatest damage that's done to evolution is to present it alongside creation.
I think that the damage that you're wanting to avoid is that people take evolution as being the absolute truth of how things came to be.
Exactly.
And as it is right now, it's only a theory, and that
it's not even.
No one's ever seen an electron around an atom, but we're pretty sure that it's there, and we can be pretty sure to tell you where around the atom it's going to be. But I think if you add in creation, you're saying, well, I'm pretty sure there's a God. No, I know there's a God, and I know He created this world.
No, we're not saying we know. Hold on now.
We're out of time.
I understand.
Mike, go down and talk to him, because I'm going to have to wrap it up. They don't even know. Watch out. Watch out for your mic. They don't even know how the atom holds together. The fact that something's true doesn't mean that we should teach a lie just because it happens to be religious.
We're going to be out here tomorrow from 11:30 to 1:30, and Dr. Girouard is speaking tonight over at the Meses building. It's room 202, right next to Batt's Hall.
We believe evidence is totally refuting evolution and fits the Bible perfectly. Archaeological evidence, scientific evidence, the sinful heart of man, the holiness of God, the Trinity, the fact that Jesus Christ was a real person, that He was the God manifested in the flesh, God-man, that He died for your sins and He rose from the dead. If you'll turn your life to Him, He'll save you and He'll change your heart. Christianity is a relationship with God. And what happens is when you come to Christ and surrender to Him, He changes you, and out from the inward change comes the fruit and the actions. A lot of people do things in the name of religion, in the name of Christianity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true Christianity.
We got 2 minutes.
Sir, we got 2 minutes.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming out here and challenging evolution, because that's what science is about. It's about challenge, questioning what things are going on. Unlike what you guys are proposing, creationism science cannot be challenged because you guys are basing it on God.
Well, isn't evolution based on no God?
No.
Okay, are you taught God in this campus?
Albert Einstein believed in creation.
Anywhere in these classes in college, in any class, do they say God anything?
Do they ever do?
Yeah, actually they do say God quite a few times in class, if you read the Bible in English.
And they say that they don't tell you about the coming out of the slime and coming from apes and all that? Are you telling me they're teaching theistic evolution here?
Just because you believe in evolution doesn't mean God does not exist. You can believe in a divine plan or a deist point of view. Okay, they do not have to be contradictory.
Sure, but we're saying what is the most logical thing, evolution or a creator. What we say is that we want to...
Do you fully understand God? I mean, do you know everything that He knows?
We know what He says in His Bible, and He will reveal to us. No, you have to be God to know everything God knows. It's logical.
Okay, so how do you know exactly what He's doing?
He's revealed Himself to us through the Word of God.
He's revealed Himself in the Bible, but that's only so that your mind can understand, because you are human. You can't understand everything. As far as we know, evolution is true. There are Homo sapiens sapiens as far as 23,000 years ago. You're suggesting that because the Bible has a date of 4,001 years, that's as long as we've existed.
Well, what we're saying is that scientists would disagree with you, and we want to put them side by side. There's many creation scientists...
We're out of time. We're out of time. Dave, we're out of time. Go talk.
Well, we're out of time, but we got to go. But yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, we're out of time, sir, but there's 200 young Earth dating methods that you're forgetting about, and man comes on the scene about 4,000 years ago, complete with intelligent libraries, language, and complex human. 4,000 years ago, whammo, out of the blue. And there's a lot of evidence for a worldwide flood. So once again, walking off does not want to know the real evidence. I want to live in my fantasy world. Well, all a Christian can do is present the truth and then the decision is yours. Jesus said, broad is the way to destruction, narrow is the way that leads to life, few there are that find it. All we can do is present the truth in love and pray that you'll turn to Christ. That's right, God still loves you too, man. Oh, goddess? I don't see any evidence for a goddess, man. But I think if you'd like some...
So you have to love your neighbor and act charitably, and then love the Holy Spirit transcends into the material world.
We have some free information over here if you'd like to come get it.
You're welcome to have any of our pamphlets. We have young earth evidences, evidence refuting the 8 men, evidence refuting God as a force, and evidence refuting other cults and false religions and relativism in general. Again, we'll be out here tomorrow, 11:30 to 1:30, and Dr. Girouard is doing a seminar. Invite your friends tonight, 7 to 9 o'clock, over in the Mezes Hall next to Bats in room 202. Thank you. God bless.
Is that there's a more degree of normality. When there is a stress, we find that the genetic variability in creatures allows with natural selection to select within the kind, but it's always within the kind. The problem, the thing that evolution hasn't been able to explain is how do you jump kinds? How do you make these phylogenetic jumps? Let's say at a family level. And the reason why I picked that, many creation scientists now believe, because the Bible says things will reproduce after their own kind, not after their own species. And so people say, well, what's a kind? Most of us think it's at the level of time. And that God, he's a good engineer, God's a good engineer. He built a lot of genetic variability into those basic kinds. And he says, okay, rabbit kind, we're going to get big rabbits, little rabbits, long ears, hares. We're going to get white rabbits, brown rabbits. Why did he do that? Because he knows eventually he's going to wipe the world out in a flood. He's going to have to take 2 of every kind, at least male and female, on board this boat. Land breathing air dwelling. Okay, just land dwelling air.
So now we've got an ark with all these animals on it. So we've got the diversity now that we have?
Certainly. When you get these kinds to come off the ark, they start breeding. They reach their full spectrum of genetic variability, and they start all migrating to different ecological niches.
And a platypus that was never even close to where Noah was? I mean,
how do you know that?
Well, where's Australia?
Wait, how do you know that the platypus wasn't? Now remember, it seems to indicate biblically, and now most of our geologists are telling us the same thing, that we have one giant landmass. If we had one giant landmass before the flood, we weren't there. We didn't scientifically observe it. It would have been easy for those animals to migrate to Noah.
And again, we're working on a function of time. And, somebody who believes in evolutionists are saying, well, these will diversify in so much time. And now we're saying, okay, here's the ark, and here's how much time it took for those many animals to fit on one ship that one man built.
How many animals?
How many animals? That's right.
How many animals had to go on board the ark? I know it, but I'm asking you. I'm going to give you some evidence in just a second.
Would 5 be enough, do you think?
No. How many
would
total
100
animals?
Be enough?
How many total animals?
Would 1,000 be enough?
How many total animals to get 2 of every land-dwelling, air-breathing creature from a family level?
From a family level.
I'll ask it this way. How many existing terrestrial vertebrates families are there?
That I personally don't have a number for.
Go look it up in Dr. Romer's book. And when you find the answer, come back and tell me. Now, let me give you some numbers.
Wait a minute, I'm not a science major. Tell me.
Romer says land-dwelling, air-breathing animals. There's 329 extant families that we know of. Ernst Mayr says that 95% of all species have become extinct. If 95% of all species have become extinct, then we'd have to have 20 times more of those families. So we would have about 6,600 families, okay? If Noah brought 2 of every land-dwelling, air-breathing animal on board the boat, that's 13,000.
I remember.
Okay, 470 feet. Let me give you this statistic. Noah's Ark was the largest ocean-going vessel built until the 19th century when the Great Eastern was built. Noah's Ark could have held 125,000 sheep-sized animals. And yet I just said we only had to bring 13,200. Oh, but Mike, you had to bring 7 of all the clean ones, okay? 7 times 6,700 is still only 45,200.
So, and after Noah,
how long did it take?
Everyone died. All the humans died besides Noah and his family.
Yeah, and I would say that we don't find. And let me give you some evidence for that. And I'm going to anticipate a question, but let me just give you one other thing. It took Noah 120 years to build the ark. The Bible says that God brought the animals to Noah, so God selected the platypus and the representative animals. So God kind of knew what he was talking about. And yeah, dinosaurs did go in the ark. He took the small ones. No reason to take the large ones. And your question you just asked me, 8 people survived the flood. And I'll show some population statistic equations tonight, the simple equations. If you start with only 2.5 people reproducing, if you only start with one couple, reproducing after the flood, having 2.5 kids on an average per generation, and only surviving for 47.5 years, which is very conservative, then in 4,250 years you would have an Earth population of 5.8 billion, which is greater than this.
And that's where you get all your diversity and...
Oh, the diversity. Yeah, the diversity is when these critters start coming off the ark, they start breeding. And, human diversity?
And they've all forgotten about God at this point.
Well, it's incredible. Every ancient civilization and culture has a legend of a worldwide flood. The Hawaiians know that his name was No. If you ask the Australian Aborigines, he'll say that he is one of 3 brothers who came off the raft during the worldwide flood, and he migrated from the east. And you know how he says the kangaroo and the wombat and the dingo and all the funny marsupials got to Australia? The Aborigine says he brought them.
There's even in several religions about the Tower of Babel.
Yes, yes.
But not all religions have a flood myth.
Not all religions do have a flood myth, but all civilizations and cultures, ancient civilizations and cultures, all remember the flood.
So what about a creation myth? They're not all the same.
They're not all the same, no. I would say this, if you look at the creation myths, they're kind of boring and we can read them, they're kind of ridiculous. The biblical creation story is very satisfactory from a scientific standpoint as far as I can see. And it's also very satisfactory from a philosophical standpoint because it answers the question, who created this? Or where did this come from? Because what happens is you keep asking, Big Bang. Where did Big Bang come from? Singularity. Where did singularity come from? Superstrings. Where did the superstrings come from? Plasma field. Where did the plasma field come from? 4-year-old take you through that logic.
But here's the logic though. Why do people want to know this?
That is one of the 7 questions that every philosopher is asked.
So maybe they want to know their place.
They want to know their roots.
And doesn't a creation myth give them their perspective to a God who controls everything?
But what if it's a creation that's revealed? You see, the person who wrote Genesis didn't say that he sat down one day and invented this. He said, and this is incredible because the 40-odd writers of all the books in the Bible said, listen, I'm not telling you what I want to tell you. God actually told me to write this down.
Isn't that what Muhammad said also? I mean, anybody can claim that God has told them to write something.
But here's the point. The Bible is the only book that offers a scientific test, a self-test to prove if it is the writings of man or the writings of God. God says in the Bible, listen, don't take my word for it. I will do something that man cannot do to prove that man did not write this book. He says,
he will do something that man cannot explain.
He will do something that man cannot do. He will predict the future with 100% accuracy.
And a fortune teller can't
predict 100% accuracy.
No, they can't.
Okay, so now we have all...
No, I'm not saying that they can, but they can make it certainly sound like, you know exactly where I'm coming from, you know where I'm going, I am in a relationship right now.
It's called being a con artist. There's a big difference, though.
People can predict in very general terms.
Well, let's see this.
General terms, like Nostradamus.
And extra biblical historical evidence to back up biblical accounts. 2,000 Old Testament prophecies have all been fulfilled with never a false prophecy. It's according to Dr. D. James Kennedy. The mathematical odds, the lowest odds you can give a fulfillment of prophecy that's not a self-fulfilling prophecy is not. The lowest probability you can give is 50-50, right? What are the mathematical odds with a 50-50 chance of fulfillment that you would make 2,000 out of 2,000 correct guesses?
So,
wait.
We're throwing dice on philosophy now?
No.
Probability.
Statistics. We're doing just
to show that it's true.
Hold on. I'm showing. Wait. Let me finish my discussion. Okay. This is the basis of quantum mechanics. So this is legitimate. Okay. The probability that you can make 2,000 accurate yes/no predictions, 50-50 chance of probability, is 1 chance in 10 to the 602nd power. What does that mean? Emile Borel, French mathematician, statistician, said if you get a probability of greater than 1 chance in 10 to the 50th power, then that event will never happen.